Okay, hello everyone. I'm just going to wait a couple more minutes. I'm still waiting for our secretary to join, and we'll give folks plenty of time to join the meeting. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to NVO3 for this actually fairly short meeting. We've got a fairly short agenda for IETF 110. My name is Matthew Bocci. I'm here with my co-chair Sam, and we also have our secretary Iju, who I think is going to take the minutes. Thank you. Okay, so this is the notes well. I'm sure you are all very familiar with this by now. This basically says anything you say within the frame of this IETF is considered to be a contribution to the IETF. I'll just leave that up on the screen for a few seconds. And so any IETF policies related to that apply. Okay, blue sheets are done automatically, which is great. And Iju is taking our minutes. Thank you. So as I mentioned, we have a very short agenda today. Just a quick working group status update, and then an update on the draft for BFD for Geneva. Any comments on the agenda? Okay. Right, milestones. So these, as usual, need an update. Many of these are completely out of date, but there are possibly one missing, which is we don't have a milestone for our Yang model. So we probably ought to add one for the Yang models. In terms of completion of the working group's charter, or completion of as much as we can do in the working group's charter and on our milestones. Now, currently we have some OEM drafts in progress. We have a data plane encapsulation, which has been published. We have a whole set of other RFCs related to the framework and architecture of NVO3 that have been published. And we have some Yang models in progress. Is there anything else? I guess the question is that at some point we need a discussion on whether that is complete from the perspective of the working group, and if there's anything else that we need to do before wrapping up the working group that will be valuable to the community. Any comments on that? So I think the approach should probably be that Sam and I will update the milestones and probably put a proposal to the list of what we believe needs to be completed before we can say that the working group is done.
So this is Sam speaking as individual contributor. So we have two drafts. One is BFD and another one is the OEM solution. Where are we with the OEM solution? Are we planning to go forward with that? We have draft authors here. So
Greg.
Yes, thank you. Good question, and thank you for bringing it up. I think that the OEM draft was adopted last year, but it's stable, and I would ask a working group to consider adoption poll or something like early review. Definitely, adoption poll will produce the comments, and then we can address the comments, and we're committed to work on them right away. So I think it's reasonable to expect that we'll have it complete by next meeting. So if, for example, adoption poll will, not adoption poll, so last call, I apologize. Last call issued, then comments will come and we'll address them by next meeting.
So we have mechanisms as well to get wider IETF review, such as a routing area review for the draft, which I think would be worth doing.
That's a great idea. So ask routing directorate for early review.
Yeah. Okay.
And as I said, we are committed to work.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments? Document status. So we have one new RFC since the last time we met as a working group in the IETF. That's RFC 8296, which is Geneva. So that's our first standards track RFC for the generic network virtualization encapsulation. So congratulations to the authors, and thank you for your hard work on addressing the fairly lengthy and detailed set of comments for that. We also have a encapsulation draft IETF NVO3 NCAP that kind of, I think that's the one that describes the output of the encapsulation design team. We did try and last call that last year. Didn't get a lot of responses on the list. We did at some point promise that we would try to publish that document, and we felt that as a working group it was valuable at the time to publish it as a way of documenting the experience of one working group in picking an encapsulation when there were multiple candidates on the table. But obviously we can't move forward without sufficient review from the working group and consensus that this is actually something that the community is interested in. So I think probably the way forward with this is to run another working group last call, but we would obviously like to see much better buy-in from the working group on progressing with this. I think the editors have also not been so active on this as well. So yes, we definitely need an active editor or two on this draft if it's going to move forward. We also have some informational documents on alternative encapsulations. I think that the one that had interest in progressing last time we discussed this was for VXLAN GPE. And so we probably need to working group last call that as well. But again, I think we're going to have to look for fairly significant interest from the working group and some comments and proper level of review from the working group in order to progress this document. We have a draft related to the control plane, which is the applicability of VPN to Genève. That went through working group last call. It's now with Martin. It is held in his queue, waiting for a companion document in the BEST working group that shows the BGP extensions required for Genève. So really we're kind of waiting on the progress of that. The virtual machine mobility document. So that was sent back to the working group after review by Martin. There are some comments from Martin about it being not really specific to NVO3. I don't know, Martin, if you want to say anything more about that at this time. Go ahead, Martin. I think you should be able to. Martin, there's a problem with your audio.
Do you hear me?
Yes, now we do.
Okay. Yes, on that specific document, I think I had communicated back to the working group my expectations. I know that Donald had tried to work a bit, help the authors to rework a bit the document, but still, I think there are a number of questions that the working group needs to bring an answer to. And what would be great if would be that you, the chairs, help drive that discussion to see where it leads.
Okay, thank you. Yang models. So we have a configuration model for NVO3. I believe there's also a Yang model for Genève as well, which isn't listed on here. Sam, I think you were looking at shepherding these drafts. Do you want to say anything?
Yes, that's correct. So I have received email from the authors yesterday. So I will I have 2 action items for that. The first one is I will have to get review comments from Yang doctors, and I'll also try to prepare for issuing the last call.
Okay, great. Thank you. And we have 2 OEM-related working group drafts. We have the BFD Genève draft that's on the agenda, and we also have the Genève OEM draft, which we just discussed. Okay, so first up is BFD for Genève. Right, I need to change my sharing to do that. Okay, go ahead.
Hello,
Hello.
It's Xiaoming speaking. Yeah, this presentation is on BFD for Genève. This draft was adopted by this working group in November last year. I present the 01 version of the working group draft. Next slide, please. This is the summary of main updates from 0.0 version to 0.1 version. The first one is to update the latest status of two most relevant referenced documents. They are Geneva document and BFD for VXLAN document. Geneva tunnel encapsulation has been published as RFC 8926, and BFD for VXLAN has been published as RFC 8971. The second main update is to resolve the open issues with BFD over Ethernet over Geneva encapsulation, including number one, if the VAP of the original NVE has no IP address, then what IP address to be used for IPv4 or IPv6? Number two, if the VAP of the terminating NVE has no IP address, then what IP address to be used for IPv4 or IPv6? The third main update is to clarify the exchange of BFD discriminator if needed. Next slide, please. For the BFD for Geneva draft, except for Geneva tunnel encapsulation, BFD for VXLAN is also one of the most relevant documents, which is now RFC 8971. Considering the similarities between BFD for Geneva and the BFD for VXLAN, the BFD for Geneva document would reuse RFC 8971 as much as possible. Otherwise, there are two main differences between BFD for Geneva and RFC 8971. Number one, BFD for Geneva specifies non-management VNI solution. Nevertheless, RFC 8971 specifies management VNI solution. For completeness, we plan to also include management VNI solution in this draft by referencing to Geneva OEM working group draft. That draft provides specifics for the requirements on both non-management VNI solution and management VNI solution, as well as how to achieve management VNI solution in the case of Geneva. Number two, BFD for Geneva use IP over Geneva as well as Ethernet over Geneva. Nevertheless, RFC 8971 use only Ethernet over VXLAN due to VXLAN characteristics. Next slide, please. As mentioned just now, the 0.1 version draft resolves the open issues with BFD over Ethernet over Geneva encapsulation. This is the open issue 1 and its resolution. The open issue is that if the VAP of the originating NVE has no IP address, then what IP address to use for IPv4 or IPv6? In 0.0 version draft, in this scenario, the IP address of the originating NVE is used. Nevertheless, in 0.1 version draft, in this scenario, the IP address 0.0 for IPv4 or /128 for IPv6 should be used. That's because 0.0.0.0 for IPv4 or column/128 for IPv6 is unspecified address. According to RFC 4291, an IPv6 packet with a source address of unspecified must never be forwarded by an IPv6 router. So we think that in this scenario, using the unspecified address is more suitable than using the IP address of the originating MAE. Next slide, please. This is the open issue 2 and its resolution. This open issue is that if the VAP of the terminating MAE has no IP address, then what IP address to use for IPv4 or IPv6? In 00 version draft, in this scenario, the IP address must be chosen from the column FFFF column 127.0.0.0/104 range for IPv6. Nevertheless, in the 01 version draft, in this scenario, the IP address should be set to column 1/128 for IPv6. That's because column 1/128 for IPv6 is a loopback address. According to RFC 4291, an IPv6 packet with a destination address of loopback must never be sent outside of a single node and must never be forwarded by an IPv6 router. In this scenario, the used IP address for IPv4 doesn't change. It should still be selected from the range 127/8. If there's also a suggestion to change the used IP address for IPv4, please let us know. Next slide, please. So with the open issues and resolutions, why do we need to use BFD over Ethernet over Geneva instead of CFM over Ethernet over Geneva? I think this is a remaining question. There are 3 reasons for the answering this question from the authors. Number 1, in some scenarios, using one OEM protocol is beneficial. For example, that can reduce the amount of code. If we use both BFD over IP over Geneva and CFM over Ethernet over Geneva, then different sets of codes is needed. Number 2, the authors assume that DC operators are unwilling to learn and operate 2 totally different OEM mechanisms. If they are going to deploy both IP service and Ethernet service in their DC networks. Number 3, last but not least, the authors are in favor of BFD much more than other OEM mechanisms outside IETF, such as CFM, that is defined in IEEE 802.1. Next slide, please. In 01 version draft, The third main update is to clarify the exchange of BFD discriminator if needed. Exchange of BFD discriminator is deemed optional and outside the scope of this job. Firstly, the out-of-band exchange of BFD discriminator is an optional add-on, which is not necessary. Because as stated in this job, at the receiving side, the BFD control packet can also be demultiplexed with your discriminator equals to 0. If out-of-band exchange of BFD discriminator is used, then there are multiple methods that can achieve it. For example, echo request reply can be used. BGP EVPN can be used. And OpenFlow can be used too. Next slide, please. Next steps, we'll revise this draft to resolve further comments and then ask for working group last call. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments? Okay. I think that's with the OEM Geneva draft. It'd be worth getting a routing area review of this. I'm wondering if we shouldn't also ask for a review from the BFD working group. I appreciate it's the same group of people mostly, but.
So I have actually one question, speaking as individual contributor here. So what's the decision about the IP header? You plan to use local host address, or what exactly was the decision?
Sorry, do you mean destination IP address?
Yes.
So for which encapsulation? Do you mean the BFD over Ethernet over Geneva?
Yes.
Destination IP, I think for IPv4, we use the range. We chose the IP address from the range from 1 to 7/8. So for IPv6, in this version, in this 0.1 version, we use the column 1/1 to 8 for IPv6.
So the destination host or NVE, whichever is processing this BFD frames, needs to open a UDP socket for 127 address. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Interesting. Is it done similarly for other VXLAN as well, or is it purely for Genève?
Because as I said, in RC 8971, the BFD for VXLAN solution is for management VNI. So
Right.
there's some difference. In this draft, we provide the solution for non-management VNI. So there's some difference between these two drafts.
Greg, you can speak.
It's a very interesting question. So when we discussed BFD over VXLAN, so it was pointed out that IPv4 loopback addresses mapped in IPv6, they don't have a special meaning. So the only loopback IP address that exists in IPv6 is 1/28. So functionally, for IPv6, if we use loopback address range for IPv4 addresses, then in IPv6 we can use only single address 1/128, and that's what recommended in Geneva OEM document, that IP encapsulated control packets use addresses from IPv4 loopback range or 1/128 for IPv6. So in that regard, BFD document and Geneva OEM documents are consistent.
I see. So purely for V4, in this case, if you don't have IP on the source and also IP on the destination, so you are planning to use 127 address, is that right?
If there is no IP, well, this goes to NVE, so which terminates Geneva. So it doesn't go to the tenant. I can imagine the tenant doesn't have IP, but I would imagine that NVE will have IP. Wouldn't that be the case?
No, I'm just echoing the issues at hand in the slides where you mentioned no IP. So I was a little bit curious. So NVEs do not have IP, right? So I'm not talking about the tenant.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
right. Again, that's a little bit, because basically the premise of this is that it terminates on that WAP because it wants to test as much as possible of their infrastructure.
Right.
So yeah, again, that's the case. If WAP doesn't have IP, then I would imagine that Ethernet encapsulation will be in place.
Okay. Anyway, I'll take a look at it, and if I have any comments.
Thank you.
Yes. Actually, we have two solutions for the BFD for Geneva. One is for the management VNI, another is for the non-management VNI. So this draft only describes the non-management VNI solution. So for non-management VNI, we provide two encapsulations. First is IP over BFD over IP over Geneva. Another is Ethernet, BFD over Ethernet over Geneva. So for the second one, there's a scenario that the web VIP of the originating MAE or the web of the terminating MAE has no IP address. So for this specific scenario, we provide resolution. So the Open Issue 1 and Open Issue 2 are just for this specific scenario I just mentioned.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, so with that was our first and last session presentation. Thank you for joining. Please look out for requests on the list for a review of the various drafts that we need to complete, and last call at some point in the near future. And with that, any other Would anybody like to raise any other issues with the working group? No. Okay. Well, I think that closes the meeting. Thank you, and hopefully see you at the next IETF, wherever that might be, online or somewhere else. Thank you.